what was a social encounter you invented and ran as a DM that you will always be proud of? My players, first of all, appreciate when NPCs aren't just needlessly hostile or almost suicidal in their aggression. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I think a lot of newer DMs have this tendency to make NPCs just default hate the player characters. Life hack, real quick, if you're a DM, just try having your NPCs being amicable or even neutral, and I bet your player satisfaction with the game will go up like 50%. But one encounter I planned once that really went over well and they just really enjoyed the character was I took this real world concept of an island where there's this fruit that grows and all these animals are there and the fruit ferments and all the animals are just on the island just like getting tipsy drunk off of these fermented fruits that they eat. And I thought that was such a funny concept. So I made a little island, and we're talking just like an island. I don't even know if island is the proper term for it, but picture a small lake and there just happens to be a little island in the middle with a bunch of fruit trees, and I called it Fermenti Island, and it was ruled by a bronze copper dragon guy, and he was like, "Welcome to Fermenti Island," and it was just like the most gregarious, fun place for them to be, and they just loved every time they could go back to Fermenti Island and just chill with that dragon. I forget if it's bronze or copper, the one that's like really friendly and likes to party. My second one, this was a subtle one. It was the long game. I was doing Curse of Strahd, and in that one, like, everyone has an accent, you know, that's pretty much like Eastern European-ish, at least when I run it. And so I tried to do subtle differences in the accents to switch it up, and one of my victories was that at one point there was a villain that they had not finished off and had escaped, and that villain made a plan against them and actually, like, knocked out and was now an imposter of another prominent NPC. So when they interacted with that NPC again, I subtly tried to change his behavior, but I really tried to get his accent wrong. And lo and behold, one of the players, the whole campaign had been paying attention to people's accents just because they were interested. And they said to the others, "That doesn't sound like Father Lucian's accent. He's talking weird." And I was like, yes. And they figured out that it wasn't him. And oh my goodness, was it one of the most fun social encounters for me as the DM to run, and for them to figure out when they thought it was like, oh, we're back at our home base, it's time to rest. But someone was like, hold up, you know, this ain't right. And man, I loved that. And I don't know what the takeaway is from that, but sometimes you can play the long game with some details like that and trust your players, and it will pay off. Fred, what's a social encounter that you were very proud of?
So I created a senile troll that had lost his regeneration called Jub Jub. Basically, Jub Jub is a play on Jar Jar Binks' Jabba the Hutt, and he'd lost his teeth and regeneration and had a walker, and he joined the party, and so they had to haul his ass and walker all over the place up these cliff faces and so forth. I think that was probably one of the better NPCs that I've ever had, because they started off with like, he's got to come with us, followed by he must be the mastermind behind everything. So I've never seen a NPC have so much, I don't know, just so much it could do, and I didn't do it. They did it. They came out with all of this nonsense themselves. Another one, which I've kind of told the story before, but I haven't told the raunchy story. So I'll tell you the raunchy story for this one, okay? And you can cut it out if you need to. And that is...
We'll see. That look on your face now, I'm worried.
Gary the Gazebo.
Gary the Gygax, that's what I was hearing for a second.
Gary the Gazebo was a NPC that I created. It was a gazebo that was a combination of a beholder, a mimic. It could fly, it had eye rays, and it would just disguise itself as basically a gazebo. I
hate that you said this is going to be raunchy, though. Go on, but I already hate it.
it's going there, okay. And then It was a play on Eric and the Gazebo, which is an old sort of story that's been passed across the internet. And I decided I want to make a monster called Gary the Gazebo. So they encounter Gary the Gazebo. Gary the Gazebo disintegrates a Trent and burns down a forest, and the player characters are like, oh, we're not going near that thing. You know, the first reaction was, not a good idea. And then one of the players did something like marvelous. I was all ready to have a conversation with them and all the rest, but I also wanted to scare the bejesus out of them. We were playing Beyond the Magic Mirror, so it's crazy Alice in Wonderland stuff. And one of my players said, I'm going to go and have a conversation with this Gary. And he did. And then brought some oil over and had lunch and a dinner, and then bought some oil, gave Gary a massage, and later on had a sexual relationship with Gary the Gazebo, and then and then since Gary the Gazebo was made of wood and porous and had so much oil rubbed into him, while Gary the Gazebo was sleeping, the player character set him alight and burnt him alive. So it had every aspect of, take what is it? Dallas, the old TV series where they used to sort of fall in love with each other and then burn each other to the ground.
And that is Dallas.
Dallas, but with gazebos and it was very strange. To be frank, I don't think that it's me that does great stuff with social encounters. I feel like the best social encounters are invented not by me, but are initiated by my players. They just do something that's just outside of what I was expecting, or such as what has happened in the past, or they bite onto something and they just won't let go, and it's got nothing to do with what I had planned in the first place. I always feel like the players are the ones who do the magic rather than me.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. DMs should pay attention to what their players hook onto, because oftentimes you might have a 10% hashed out NPC, think it's not going to be useful, but the players say, no, Fred, give us 99% of this NPC, and you just spend a lot more time on it than you thought, and that's making memories. Teni, what kind of social encounters have you been proud of?
Well, mine does not involve intimate relationships with building aberrations, but I think my favorite social encounter was also something that was invented from my players just kind of reacting to what was just kind of in motion. In the last big campaign I ran, it was an intrigue-heavy campaign set in a post-apocalyptic world where the remnants of civilization were living underground while dragons ruled the surface. My players were having a heated interaction with a nemesis who'd been kind of playing a big antagonistic role. He and his private guard were kind of harrying them. And this guy was in a seat of power, so he was kind of in a untouchable, navigate this social situation very carefully kind of position. And when this nemesis and his guard threatened to apprehend the party, one of the players defended themselves, resulting in the instant petrification of one of the guard, which then gave them a lawful standpoint. They're like, well, we're going to put this player on trial for the murder of this guy. And so a trial was to be held, and there were 3 leaders in this town, 2 of which were antagonists of the party, and one of the players was an apprentice to. So they already knew that this was not a great situation for their player on trial. And then one of the players decided to get to the idea of, I want to begin looking into the laws of this town, which is just the weirdest thing. That's what players come to the table for. They're like, we want to read laws. We want to get to how does this town run? And I'm like, okay, sure. And they're like, I want to find out if there's a way for me before the date of this trial to oust one of these leaders and usurp them and take over their position. And as it just so happened, maybe a few sessions before this one, I had written the history of leadership through this town. And I was like, there is actually one instance where there was this This one law was kicked in like a couple hundred years ago. It hasn't been used since. There's a trial by combat kind of situation where an apprentice of one of these leaders specifically, which they were, could attempt to overthrow one of the other leaders. And so they started this campaign to the town being like, we need to host one of these things. Like, I want to overthrow this guy. And everybody, through successful like persuasion checks and such, they got the town into it. They hosted this event and they defeated him swiftly in one-on-one combat. And by the time the trial came about, this main nemesis didn't realize that he had lost his ally. So when the trial came and found out that one of the party mates had become a leader, it was just this guy trying to dig out of this hole that he didn't realize he was in. And I was just so proud of my players for asking the right questions and kind of beating my system. It was like, I didn't realize how this was going to go at all. And I'm not going to write laws every time, so I'm glad it worked out for you this time.
Yeah, Teni, I love that because that is a lot of trust from your players. Because a lot of players, they might just think, oh, the DM has certain things prepared and they're not going to deviate from that. I'm not even going to bother asking. I'll just kind of show up and kind of let myself be railroaded. That shows a lot of trust that your players have in you to do that kind of thing, that they would ask that question even. So that's to be creative. So that's awesome. It's kind of like an extra deep rules lawyer, like when they actually want to know the rules of your setting and not of the like game mechanics. That's the true rules lawyer, the person who asks the question of like, you got trial by combat in this town, you know?
Yeah, I'm a deep lore lawyer.
Yeah, the lore. I almost tongue-tied. The lore lawyer. The lore lawyer. Man, that's hard to say. Okay.
Memo to self: don't change my name to that.
Yeah. The rural juror. If you've seen 30 Rock, anybody? Wally DM. What is a social interaction that you've planned and been proud of?
I think Fred said something, not the gazebo part, but something else that more resonated to the way that I am. And I really don't have any social encounters that I invented that I am proud of or, went like that, because it seems like a lot of mine, they just happen. And it's not, a lot of it is the players, but sometimes you can just connect with a player in your game and you can just role play back and forth, and it's organic, and it's improv and things like that. What I do when I prep for a game is I put down the possible things that could happen and possible people they can meet, and next to those possible people they can meet, I use alignments because I think it's easy just to be like, so if I need a split second look as to their personality, I've got it right there. It's the only way that I use alignment anymore is for my NPCs. But then I've also jot down maybe what's their agenda, what is something that they're looking to get, what are they thinking of when the players come there to ask them for something. And so I don't have like this epic story to share, but my friend Seraph, who has been in my Dragon Heist campaign for like 3.5 years, and playing Waterdeep, he plays a human paladin that is a noble, and we have had so many fantastic discussions with the Growlhounds from Waterdeep. They're nobles as well. They lie on the evil side. They kind of have a thing for Asmodeus, as far as worship goes and stuff. And the secret, or the what Lady Growlhound wants to do, is she wants to become one of the Masked Lords of Waterdeep. And so Seraph and I, his character and this NPC, we would get into, it's just like back and forth. It started off as a property deal. He would offer this, she would come back with this, and then it's just like, well, wait a minute, what if we did something a little different? What would you think about that? And then it just goes into, epic stories without ever being planned. So long story to my answer is I haven't created any, but I am proud of a lot of the social interactions that have developed just out of playing the game.
Having a mindset to be collaborative with your players is sometimes the best preparation you can make. And I think that was something that kind of went through all of our stories, was there was some degree of buy-in from players. for a player to think, oh, is there a chance Jordan is doing a wrong accent on purpose, or like, should I ask, or is it just Jordan's not good at accents, which both were true in this instance. And then Fred, Denny, and Wally, you all shared examples of times when your players were collaborative with you and not passive. And so if you prepare for that, they reciprocate it, and then you will perpetuate that behavior from your players. And that's a great way to enjoy the game. Otherwise, it's just too rote, and it becomes predictable and less fun. You get burned out, all that kind of stuff. It's good to have that back and forth. The same principle actually occurs in improv. In improv shows, there are sometimes people who are contributing more than others, and newer players in an improv game or a show often do not contribute, and they just take. And so if you have players that only take from you as the DM, and they are not that back and forth, then that is very taxing to you, and you do burn out. Everyone who's listening to this, if you're a player, have that back and forth with your DM. Ask the questions that maybe you're not sure they have an answer to, and see if they're going to collaborate with you. And if they don't, maybe ask them afterwards and say, hey, I was trying to do this. What was your take on that? Did you know I was trying to do that? Oftentimes, they probably just didn't notice, and they might have been, oh, I could have done more with that. Yeah, please do that again, please. And they'll beg you to not give up on it, Maybe it was just a bad instance. And DMs, take it and run with it when your players latch onto things, because it'll grow and make big memories that you'll always remember, like the ones that we've shared, for better or worse. Any other thoughts?
If you don't mind, I think I'd like to add on to that. I would also say I guess I shouldn't say don't. As far as, I guess it's just in my style. I wouldn't plan an epic social encounter. I would rather it just happen naturally, because I wouldn't want to disappoint myself. Be like, it's like prepping for a game, and then they go that way instead of the way that you prep for. And the same can happen with a social encounter. You're like, oh man, I can't wait. This NPC's got all this good. It's going to reveal all these plot points, and they don't give a darn about that NPC. It's the one. It's the butler. It's the one that's bringing you drinks, that has a comb over and a funny accent. That's the one they want to talk to. So I would probably, I guess, as DM advice is you can plan out social encounters, but don't be heartbroken if the players decide, well, we kind of want to talk to that one, and just go with it.
Absolutely.
In terms of, like, when it comes to social encounters, what are NPCs for? Like, adding a sense of humor, giving out information. But when it comes to information, in that example that Wally just gave, perhaps they don't want to talk to the NPC that you're like, yeah, he's going to give all this information. Well, guess what? The NPC they actually are interested, for some reason, now knows all that information. So you still have a way to get out what you need.
Everyone, I hope this was an enlightening discussion for social encounters, what makes them rewarding, how much to plan for them, what to keep in mind, and how to have that give and take with your players. Let us know in the comments if you've had especially satisfactory social encounters. In the end, if you were playing a TTRPG, I like to think that you also enjoy those social interactions as much as the combat, because why aren't we just playing Warhammer or something like that? We got to have those fun social interactions, and those can be just as fun as a finishing blow in an epic boss fight. So let us know your experiences, and we'll see you in the next DM Roundtable question. See ya.